Hello, and I'm on here to run through a couple of vocal exercises with you on the theme of using resonance for a more fuller sounding voice. Now, the reason I'm dropping on video for you is so that you can see what I'm doing. Some of the things that we do in the Academy are audios so that you can just put them on and learn to listen deeper and better to the sound that you're creating. But because occasionally we need to do a how-to and it's really good to see what somebody else is doing, I want to drop in and just give you some of the exercises that you can do for a fuller sounding voice using resonance and not effort. So resonance is where you filter and shape the sound. So let's just back up 2 secs, okay? When you are creating sound, you're using air straight away. You suck in air, you breathe in, okay? And then you've got air in your lungs. And now we're going to do something with it. We're going to make some sound. So what's the first thing that happens? We have to be in position to expel air. And of course, this happens really simultaneously. It almost feels like it's back to back. But what I'm doing is slowing down, a bit of a David Attenborough process so that you can actually understand where you can actually make the difference to your singing. So you've got your vocal folds, first of all, that are vibrating against the air. Uh-oh, uh-oh. They are the first things that are creating sound. If you hum, you'll feel that that is the vibration that's being created first. Because you've got your lips closed with the hum, you can sense this internal feeling of sound and resonance. And that's why it's important to actually use what we call these semi-occlusive sounds, or hums and sirens, etc., because they get you more used to what you feel on the inside than what you hear on the outside. One of the biggest complaints that I hear from singers, because I actually do live sound as well, so bit of a uniqueness there. Started off my whole kind of life as a sound engineer at the age of 20, went to music college at 23, studied classical music, sang with orchestra, came away, opened a vocal studio, learnt how to sing contemporary, learnt how to actually sing with a band and a microphone, which was a completely new entity for me, taught hundreds of people, and was performing and had created a record and toured it around the country before I was 16 years old. So not because I'm so brilliant, but because there's so many different elements of music that I've covered. I have not yet covered Adele's celebrity status. So we all know that. So let's just get off that train. So the reason why it's so important to look at these things is that there's so much more choice. And when I first started singing, or even like doing live sound, I didn't think there was choice. I didn't think that I had any opportunity to shape or change anything. I thought it was set, and I thought it was my talent that was the problem, which was really hit my self-confidence massively. So I've been on a little bit of a mission for many, many years now to help people understand that your voice is a bit like plasticine, and you have choice, and you can change things, and you can develop and evolve things, and that doesn't matter whether you want to do that for hobby or profession. Okay, so back to the sound engineering thing. One of the biggest complaints of singers was the fact that they couldn't hear themselves properly. So the natural inclination when they're singing against music that's too loud is that they're trying to hear from outside in the PA, in the environment, and they're not hearing themselves. So when I had a conversation with my husband, who's a music producer, one of the things he said to me that was really telling, and I agreed with him, is he said, I really got to the point, he said, sometimes the music we were playing on stage was loud. It was in the 70s and 80s. He couldn't even hear himself sometimes. He said he always knew that he was on tune in what he was doing as a backing vocalist, or what he was singing. And the reason he was on tune is that he said he could feel the sound in his bones. He was feeling sound. He knew where the position of every one of those notes were, because he knew his own voice and he knew the feeling of the pitch behind the sound. So he always knew in the tracks that he was doing where he was on pitch or off pitch. He just went there. So just realize we're not talking about perfect pitch here, where you can just randomly pitch things. We're talking about incredible relative pitch, so that when you're singing a song over and over again, you can actually feel where that song sits in your own voice and muscle memory. And that's really powerful. So if we're looking at changing our sound, if we're looking at enhancing, getting better at what we do, we're always looking for that little tweak of improvement, isn't it? It's why millions of people are watching YouTube videos for a tweak of improvement. But you've got to know what you're tweaking and why you're tweaking it, okay? And if you're not, if you're trying to do it to get better, but you don't realize what you've got going for you or what you need to actually enhance or improve, you're starting from the wrong starting point. So we're looking at resonance and how you can create a fuller sounding voice with resonance rather than effort. So back to the singers on the stage again. What's happening is that they're pushing using breath pressure and body bracing power or support as a way of trying to get that sound louder, often so they can hear it more. So there's this idea that the harder we push, the higher it will go, or the better, the beltier it will be. The harder we push, the beltier it is. So unfortunately, what that fosters is a whole load of shouty singing, generally flat, slightly off tune. Or it fosters the other, where you've got somebody that actually has the capacity to do it, but they keep backing off in fear and flipping, or going back to a lighter voice, or getting stuck in a particular stylistic delivery because they don't know how to change that. So we're looking at one tiny aspect here that just to open your thinking of how you can actually use filtered sound, which is the sound that you've created here, that comes up in through the vocal tract and starts to, the vocal tract acts as a resonator, your mouth acts as a resonator, your nasal cavity acts as a resonator, and lips and teeth and tongue, etc. Imagine that this, your body, is like a Marshall amp, okay? It's your kind of internal PA system, if that makes sense to those of you that use microphone or on stage. It's your internal PA, or if you're a more classical singer, it's your orchestra or your choir on the inside of you. So we're looking at creating a balance of all of the type of sounds that you're capable of producing on the inside of you. You can have a little bit more of this and a little bit more less of that. If you enhance this particular type of sound and you dampen this, you get a particular type of result. So if you are your kind of internal PA, because it filters the sound, it amplifies it, and then you sing it, and then obviously the walls, it's hitting walls sound, as in physics, is hitting the walls and bouncing back to you in the room as an echo. So you're never hearing the sound as it leaves you, you're always hearing sound as it comes back to you. So that might be a revelation to some of you, that you're not actually creating the sound and hearing it as you're doing it. So all of that shouting in vain, that you're trying to make it bigger, you're simply making effort in the wrong direction because the sound is bouncing back at you. You have to get used to how you're filtering and perceiving and feeling and positioning that sound. That's what we're talking about. So what are some of the common problems that we get? We can sometimes get over nasalized singing. Okay, and the reason we get over nasalized singing, as I'd said in another video, is that we are simply copying a very auto-tuned, compressed piece of recording of a particular genre or style or a particular artist, and we're putting that into our voice and we're morphing ourselves into that, not actually giving any attention whether it's your voice that is actually suitable for, unless you want to be a tribute act. So we're having to look at how can we shape this sound? What are some of the ways that if we're doing one thing, that we can use consonants, vowels, exercises, changing things in order to create a different sound, or to at least explore the possibility of having a different type of sound. Now, in order for you to explore having a different type of sound, you have to do one thing first. You have to realize that the sound that you're creating will be your comfort zone. Now, if it's your comfort zone, sometimes that's quite a good thing. A comfort zone for a singer in terms of range and pitch and where we're positioning keys is brilliant. That's exactly what we need. But your comfort zone in terms of the type of sound or the quality of the tone that you can create can be really limiting. Because if you're simply creating the same type of tone every time, it's going to get quite boring to anybody listening to you. It might be what you feel is your signature sound, but people get really locked into a certain type of sound or a certain type of couple of notes. So once you start to actually open that package, that there is more than meets the eye to your voice, to yourself, even as an artist, now you've got to go into a place where you can develop that and enhance that. It's a bit like photoshopping your own voice, if you see what I mean. Okay, so we want to Photoshop you, but in order to do that, you've actually got to look at what you want to change. So if you've got more of a nasalized sound, I've got no lights, no camera, and no action, so hang on. So for instance, you might be going really nasalized. Notice that what we've got happening there is we're creating twang, we're creating volume, actually we're creating decibels, we're creating a real kind of sort of brighter, brassier kind of sound. But we're missing some of the warmth behind it. We're missing some of the kind of lower overtones. So if you think of what a pitch is, a pitch, when you say the note is not a single thing. The note is a series of frequencies. Okay, it's a series of hertz frequencies, and those frequencies together, it starts with a formant, it starts with the bass formant, and then there's all harmonics and overtones across that actually enhance the tone of that. And that's what you're doing when you're changing the shape or you're exploring more resonance in your voice, is you're actually exploring being your own EQ desk. Okay, it's like you're being your own equalization. So if you've ever seen a recording desk or a live sound desk, you'll see sometimes the digital ones are often be in the digital pack, but if a very old analog desk will actually have every channel had a series of, it would have high end, high mid, low mid, bass frequency. And what the engineer would do all the time he would be listening to your voice, and in the context of the mix, he would be tweaking all the kind of overtones and harmonics that are above that fundamental frequency. He's doing that in the recording studio, and I do it on live sound. And I'm doing it to actually make a balance between the different singers on the stage, or if somebody's got a particularly nasal voice, to add a little bit of bottom end in that, so it sounds a little bit more rounded and not so harsh. So the singer's carrying on singing, and we're playing behind the scenes with that to create a different overall effect. And because I've sat on both ends of the scale, I've been on the stage creating that into the moment, and you don't feel as if you have much choice over it. And because I've been behind the scenes shaping sound as it's being created, you have a unique perspective that actually you can be your own EQ desk, which means that you have the ability to start to add a little bit more high end, add a little bit more mid, add a little bit more bass, just by changing the shape of the tongue position, the lips, the way you say the vowel that you're actually singing. I know, how freaking awesome is that to be able to do that? Now, why nobody's talking about that? They are talking about it. They're talking about tone color and quality of tone, etc., and resonance. But they're not talking about it from this perspective, because, just to be honest with you, there's not a lot of vocal coaches that are also engineers or sound on the outside of that. And because I've sung both classical and contemporary, I just started to see the truth of this, okay? And it just became a really interesting way of helping other singers really get to grips with the sound that they were creating for and in themselves before they decided how much they had to power it out to the world. That's a real key, because then you can listen back to it and record and sort of play with it and decide, is that the sound that you want to create or that you have for your own voice? So we could be kind of over nasalizing it. We could be going, we could be really dumbing down. We could have a position in the voice that doesn't have a lot of bright sort of harmonics to the top. So in other words, we're enhancing the bottom, but we're not of the sound, these kind of lower kind of back tones, as it were, and we are not enhancing the front to brighter tones. And vowels sit in that as well. So for certain types of music, that might work perfectly well. for certain types of people, that might work perfectly well. But if your voice and your feeling behind it just feels as if something's out of balance, it's the positioning that's out of balance. So we wanted to look at what is the best position for my voice or for this genre of music. Clearly, if you think about country music is real kind of stand by your man. It's really twangy. A lot of Americans sort of accent in there as well, and so you've got a particular sound for country. You've got a particular sound for choral. You've got different sounds for opera. You've got a for rock, or for different things for R&B. You can see every genre of music actually creates its own different type of USP, if you like, unique standing point or unique selling point, and it has its own resonance in between it, but every artist can also form their own on the inside of that too. So for me, that was incredibly exciting, because rather than go, oh my God, the smorgasbord is so big, I've got so much choice, now it actually freed me up to realize how uniquely I could bring myself to music, how I could actually look at that music and work out a way that I could express it authentically as the music and as myself. That's where the confidence started to truly gain itself. And I would use a lot of exercises as well to do that. So some of the exercises that I might have used, if I had a very choral voice and it was very kind of light, and I wanted to have a stronger voice for more contemporary, so say if I wanted to go from choral to contemporary, I might actually be doing something like na 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 na. Now you notice that's really majoring on the bright tones, but if all I've ever been used to is ooh, notice there are no bright tones there. One of my mentors many years ago, he just said, Angela, you just got to stay on that nay for about 3 months. And I've heard several videos of different vocal coaches going, oh, you need to know why you're singing the exercise that you're doing, and you shouldn't do this method, and you should do my method, and you shouldn't do this method, and you should do that method. And yeah, okay, they may believe that, they may be selling their product, got no problem with that. But understand that really the fundamental reason why a teacher picks a certain exercise is one of two reasons. Either that's the exercise that they do as a go-to for choice, and so they don't have any more tools in their bag, so everybody does the same exercise, okay? And so it's only going to work for some people and not others. But good teachers know that you may have options or can enhance your resonance or the quality of your tone, and so they're often picking different exercises and different approaches in order to help you evolve and develop so much more that you're capable of developing. So when he said that to me, it's because I'd come from a classical tradition, and so I had very little ability to create a contemporary sound. I didn't know where my tongue was. I didn't know what kind of sound I needed to get used to in my own head, how different that was from the sound that I'd previously created. I mean, it's very different. If you're doing this, let's do a little bit higher. If I'm operating on a classical falsetto resonance basis, and then I suddenly want to do contemporary, na 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 na, it's a very different setup in my voice. There's a different setup in my vocal folds. There's a completely different feel on the inside of me. And I had to get used to that, basically. So I had to get outside of my comfort zone with exercises that pulled my muscular system into new and different ways of approaching it. And if I'd have got all scaredy cat, or it must be like this, or I must follow this teacher or that teacher, I would never in a million years have developed the voice that I've got now. It started off with just exploring the opposite to what I was used to. And then it started to develop in terms of being able to actually swap between those genres a lot quicker. So say if somebody's only ever done contemporary, and they want to do more classical, they've got to shift their resonance, the setup in their vocal folds, the way that they use their breath. Even if somebody's doing contemporary and they want more variety in the contemporary, na 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 by shifting my tongue position, by understanding that I want to create a darker shade, a different shade, I can start to actually have complete control over my vocal mechanism, the lips, the teeth, the tongue, the vocal folds, the larynx position, my breathing, the way I'm delivering that, the shape of that. It's all up for grabs. Now, it's not all up for grabs all at once or all at the same time. As I said, I started by just looking at something different than I was doing. If my voice was all nasal, I'm looking at creating more bottom overtones to that. If it's all choral or shouty, I'm looking at creating more resonance or more twangy, more kind of brassy sound to that, that has a little bit, that takes me away from the shouty, constricted position. I'm looking at actually changing those qualities even throughout a song to enhance my excitement in the song or where the song is going. Now, when you start to get a handle and become more conscious of resonance, then you'll realize that you don't have to use the power button nearly as strongly or nearly as much, and you can start to use your breathing more effectively. So how does that work? For me, behind every different method of singing I've ever heard, there are principles, okay? And I started to talk about principles of singing years ago with a student, it was just making sense to me. And it's made ever increasing sense to me as the years have gone on. So if anything, that's my trademark, is for me, it's pitch, position, and power. And what we're looking at there is, I say, remember, it's principles here. So the principle of pitch. That pitch is telling you everything you need to know. It's telling you what position your voice needs to adjust to and your brain needs to tell your voice. It's also telling you a composite of different harmonic frequencies that are making up that pitch. It's telling you whereabouts in the, the kind of geography or the landscape of the keyboard or the sound it is. And, oh, excuse me, and I'm getting all excited, you see. And it's also telling you where you need to position it. And it's also telling you power, but you don't realize that straight away. So in that pitch, it's telling you a lot of information. And what's really important is that you lock into that pitch before you start making effort. The reason is because if you're making lots of effort to reach, quote unquote, a pitch, the biggest problem with reaching a pitch is that you're assuming it's outside of yourself. And we've already established that when you listen to a sound, you're listening to the sound that you've already created bouncing back off the walls. It is a created sound that you are listening to, not the sound that you create. So listening to pitch is vital. Close your eyes. If you were to imagine where you feel that pitch just on a hum, where would you attempt it? Now, people are scared because we're so used to listening outside of ourselves that we don't know how to listen in. We don't know how to listen on the inside. So it's one of the first and fundamental things I have to do with singers in order to actually understand that they can hear pitch, and their job is to hear it deeper and deeper with greater conviction so that they can inform their whole system how then to operate. So once your body is hearing that pitch, the next thing it does is it's positioning. It positions itself to the pitch. So if we just get a note out for no apparent reason, okay, I'm straight in at the pitch. I'm not or kind of called the moo cow when we're kind of wandering up to the pitch. That anything other than me directly into the pitch is me looking outside myself for the pitch, and that doesn't work. So close your eyes. What do you feel and hear? If you had no sight, if you couldn't see where you think the pitch is, where would you feel it? Where would you hear it? So you have to wake that up inside yourself first. So it's great to do hummings to things because you stop pushing so hard. And you also get really used to actually feeling where that pitch resonates currently in your bones, okay, before you can shape it. So part of that positioning is feeling for its position in relation to the pitch. And automatically, once you're getting that, you'll have a certain amount of breath and a certain amount of power, if you like, that you're using currently to sustain or support that pitch, which is where the idea of support actually comes from. So if we're then looking at creating a balance in what we're doing or enhancing any kind of sound that we're creating, we're going to be playing with the positioning of that pitch before we play for the power. The reason is, if you just go for power, you've not established an understanding of what you're trying to add more to. So if you're creating power and you haven't got enough of the vocal folds working against that, there isn't a balance, you're not able to hold that position, you add more breath power to it and it all falls apart. So this is what happens to people. They go one of two ways. I'm going to have some power into it. I'm going to go mum 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 mum. So here straight away I'm using more power, and here straight away I've got lots of constriction going on because I've overloaded the system and I haven't worked out what that tone is about. I'm just aiming. I think that high notes are hard and therefore I'm pushing towards a high note. Sometimes people will aim for a pitch and they'll just add that breath pressure at it, but the vocal folds aren't strong enough to actually even strain to it, so just flip off. Mum, 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 mum. So we've got an imbalance going on. And then people go, sort my breathing out, sort my breathing out. And it's not simply that easy, because there are three things that we can control at any one time. We can control the resonance, we can control the vocal folds, we can control the breath. And actually, you're not looking at doing one at the expense of the other. Your job is to actually have them all working for you. But the interesting thing for the singer is, if you're just trying to work this from the power perspective, you don't know how much or less power to use to create the thing that you need. So this is where your resonance and the sound that you're creating, or the tone and the effort or the way that your vocal folds are working, gets compromised. So for instance now, I'm going to add several repeats onto the top. I'm going to get louder and then get quieter to prove at which point power comes into the game. Okay, so you can hear me going louder and quieter, louder and quieter. Now, that is driven by me using breath pressure, but at the same time my vocal folds are able to withstand that without constriction. So I've built up the stamina in order to take more pressure. How do you build up the stamina? You've got to be looking at the positions and able to stay through the tonal positions whilst you're increasing volume. As soon as you increase volume and the whole thing falls apart, you've actually gone past your barrier and boundary as to where you've got a good tone that you're creating and you can sustain. So you have to keep, for me, coming back to the vowel, the sound, the tone, the pitch. I don't care how good your acting is. If you're acting off pitch, it doesn't matter. Line it up with the pitch. Then you'll work out what position you're in, and then you've got this balance between the type of sound or resonance that you're creating and the amount of power that you're trying to create it with. Keep remembering that you have the ability to shape all of this, but you have to look at where you are currently and what you're trying to get to, what you're trying to do. Say, for instance, you want a fuller sound, but you're getting constricted. It doesn't mean lighten off until you haven't got a full sound. It means you have to now understand, I might be excessively using power, or I'm trying to use breath to make this louder. Okay, when actually I need to be also looking at the type of resonance that I'm creating. So for instance, if I'm going, he goes, it sounds quite thin. It simply sounds thin because we haven't got the whole sound available to us. We haven't got any other harmonic resonant tone available. So we might use a particular sound that enhances that. I might give a consonant that's kind of a B sound. I might give an sound. If you go B, buh, you can hear straight away I'm not using any of that twangy nasal brassy resonance, and I'm actually creating more of the darker resonance in the mouth, creating that sound to resonate differently. So if I were going man, 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 and then I suddenly go ba, 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 straight away you can hear that the change that is happening, or the rebalancing is happening, because I'm using an opposite consonant or a darker or an opposite vowel against the current tendency and the current problem that I have. And if for instance I am having a really sort of kind of hooty voice or a choral type of voice, or it's light, and I'm wanting to have a little bit more power in that, I might then start to look towards more brassier, nasalized resonances that increase the volume by about 3 dB, which is double, because that's where that sort of frequency kind of has this effect of almost doubling the volume. As soon as I've added that into there, we've got a different sound. So it's like a paint palette. It's plasticine. It's like you're going to colour the sound, and you colour the sound by experimenting, exploring with moving the way that you actually create the vowel and say the sound all the way through. Now, I'll say this with one last caveat. The reason why sometimes it's important to be able to keep one vowel from the beginning all the way through in an exercise is that it teaches your voice how to move through the mechanism without changing much, okay? So that you can find a core tone that really works for you. If I do this, for instance, can you hear that, how unbalanced it is if I go from one distinct opposite to another? What's very subtle for people is because they keep thinking of highs and lows as hard, difficult, effortful, they are changing that vowel position in order to try and reach notes, changing vowels to try and reach notes. The fundamental problem with changing vowels to reach notes is we don't reach notes by changing vowels. Reaching notes happens when your brain tells your vocal folds what frequency pitch to be at, and your vocal folds adjust to that. The rest is how you filter that information out. So it's created in your thought, not in your effort, okay? So for instance, keeping the vowel the same all the way through is very helpful if you use consonants and vowels as a means to work that out. Okay, so I'm going from a modal voice, I'm going to a falsetto, I'm swapping over muscles there, I'm doing lots of different things, I'm moving from modal to falsetto, and I'm actually keeping this vowel the same all the way through. So I'm really creating an ability in my voice to handle the journey and to be able to actually have those antagonistic muscles working for me, not against me. By default, it also means that my breath pressure and the way that my breath flows and the way that I breathe and handle that breath has to balance out in response to it, okay? So back in 1936, Benjamin Geely said that a good balanced voice is or good breath control, other way around, good breath control is the result of a balanced voice and not the cause of it. In other words, we couldn't work on breath pressure and breath control in order to get balance. You actually work on the balance of the tone in order to actually work out the breath pressure. So it's the other way around. And so these things have had this interplay together all of the time, okay? So where do you go from here? There's a couple of options. If you are a singer that is already outperforming and getting paid for their singing, or you are wanting to transition in your singing to full-time or paid work, then please PM me below, or click on the link which will be to my email and send me a private message, because you will need some support while you're out there gigging. And there's particular ways that we can do that. If you are a beginner, if you are a hobby singer, if you're looking to simply improve, or you're on a budget, and everybody's on a budget, but sometimes you know you if you need to invest in your voice at a deeper level. If you know that if you want it faster and you want it now because you keep putting it off, the only reason to work with a coach more intensively is because you actually stop dithering and coasting, and you actually want somebody to hold you account, get it working, get it sorted, help you to get that confidence and that whole kind of thing together, and get out there and be doing it. If you know that that is not your journey right now, okay, or you know that your journey is, you're really happy with your journey being alongside other things that you do, or you're just tentatively experimenting with it, then we've got an offer on the Online Singing Academy. All of the work that I've just talked to you about now, we do in the Online Singing Academy. We do with group calls, and we do through video-based training like this, and also the ability to speak to me direct and ask questions and get them answered. So we've got a special offer on at the Singing Academy at the moment, and that special offer is going to be closing very, very soon. So please do click on the link and check it out. Have a look, see if it's for you. If you've got a question, please feel free to email us. If you're not sure that this kind of learning is good for you or right for you, because you're simply used to always going to a one-to-one lesson, or you just can't see how it would work, ask us a question. If you found any value in the information that I've been sharing with you at whatever infinitesimal lesson, even if there was some of the science or anything else that you didn't understand, or if suddenly your mind exploded with, oh my goodness me, I never looked at it like that. If that's what's going on for you, then you are a real candidate to actually improve your voice, either through the Academy and through a simple step-by-step approach where you can actually, get your questions answered virtually on a daily basis if you need to, for the same price as you would a generalized lesson. Or if you know that you are really, really ready to actually invest and increase your ability to move forward, because you know that now is the time, or that you are a professional actor, actress, singer out there, and that you know that every time that you are not singing well or at all, you're not being paid, you're not getting through the auditions, or even worse, you're actually feeling that you're not really reaching your full artistic potential with the way that you're currently delivering it, then that is the next conversation to have. Now, I don't mind if you have that conversation because you have it over, through the Academy, or just PMing me on here and asking a question, or whether you just go, we'll have a deeper conversation. Really doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is that you actually understand what stage of development that you're at, and you take some action and go in line to help yourself develop further the thing that you love doing. Because we can all coast, we can simply repeat the same year 10 times and go, where did the last 10 years go? Or we can actually choose to invest the next year of our life into exponentially creating both confidence and happiness and a great voice, and who knows what opportunities are going to come your way. So I wanted to put this video together to show you what was possible and what we do, and some of the kind of, maybe way out things that I think about things now after all the years of following and developing this. I was simply just like you, truly was. I had a good stage presence, so anybody that is new to that, I grew up on the stage. I grew up watching amazing performers, so I knew what that took right from an early age. But I didn't have any confidence in my voice for many, many years. And I had several years of lessons that were partially successful and mostly not successful. And it really wasn't until I decided that I was going to put my stake in the ground, find my voice, find out what was hot, what was not, that things exponentially started to move forward. And it opened up so many opportunities, such a world to me, that I wouldn't have even guessed where I was now without just putting that little decision in place and heading down that road. Once you have made that decision, once you've reached out in one form or another, once you've made that decision, the next thing is just a quick quitting. It doesn't matter how long it takes. Sometimes it can take exponentially quicker than you think, and then other things might just take a little bit longer. The key is, if you keep quitting, or keep kind of thinking that it's your talent or your ability, or it's just not made for you, then you're just buying into another one of those excuses and stories that we're just sitting there with, for the next 10 years. So because you have a voice, you can develop it. Because you're watching this, if you're watching this to the end, then you seriously have a voice that you either are developing, want to develop further, or want to start the exploration process. Either way, know that we can help you in one form or another. Please reach out either to us from the Academy offer, or to actually have a one-to-one conversation with me as to what it takes for you to reach your full potential with your voice. I look forward to speaking to you again.